Graeme Rose, hello,
Mr. Vimal, hello to you. It's
mate.
lovely to see
Yeah, it's lovely to see you, Graeme. Oh gosh, how you been coping with lockdown?
you. Well, it's been strange for everyone, hasn't it? Let's face it. But it it is peculiar. I think I've kind of managed by trying to keep myself as busy as possible, just having a sense of purpose. Because, well, like you, I'm used to being out on the road, really, making shows and taking them out, and not being at home. I've led this itinerant life all of my working life, and suddenly I'm at home, within, four walls, and it's very, very strange having to kind of relearn how to make theatre and to connect with people. Is challenging. I mean, it's also had incredible rewards to it, because I think, it's like necessity is the mother of invention in a way, and we've found lots of different ways of connecting with each other. So, but it has been tough.
And would you say that's kind of helped you in terms of keeping sane in the sense of the different kinds of maybe projects that you may be working on? That's kind of kept you sane as opposed to, because I mean, we all need human contact, don't we? And sometimes when you don't get that human contact, it's the worst possible thing.
Well, a lot of that energy that I feel that I thrive on is the energy of meeting different people and being in different places and environments, and sparking off people. So I absolutely abhor routine. Really, I feel like routine is my enemy, and perhaps that's a lot of self-knowledge. Do you know what I mean? I feel that I'm not my best being a routine person. I like to be challenged and to be given lots of different stimulation.
You
So
you thrive on chaos.
you know what, is that obvious? Oh, terrible, isn't it? But it's true. I think it is true. Lots of people can't manage that or can't cope. They need to have everything in its place and to know what's going to happen. I actually really thrive on the unknown and the different.
which, which is great, which is brilliant. But great, this kind of you've done loads of stuff. I mean, you're an amazing actor. I mean, look, I know who you are and I know what you do. For those out there, I always do this, so you're gonna have to get ready for this. Okay, so I'm gonna do it in the style of Cilla Black. Okay, yeah, I'm sure you remember Cilla Black. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
just about old enough
yeah,
to
just a
remember.
bit, just yeah, a little bit, I think. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So, what's your name and what do you do?
My name's Graham. I'm from Silioke, which is where I am now, and I call myself a theatre maker and a performer, but yeah, to many I'm an actor, and to others I direct, I have produced, and I write occasionally. So I'm an all-round kind of theatre artist, you might say.
Brilliant. So, as I've said, you've done loads of projects. I mean, amazing projects. You're connected to so many different companies, whether it's the likes of Stanscath, Black Country Touring. In fact, you're the founding member of Stanscath. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And you still are the founding member of Stanscath, along
I
with.
suppose I will be the founding member of Stanscath, and I'm an associate artist, I suppose, with the company still.
Yeah.
Um, and I suppose my working life has always been focused around independent theatre scene. So I always wanted to make my own work right from the beginning. So I had a company before Stanscath, actually. So I went to uni and I ended up doing by default theatre studies. I didn't go to study there, theatre studies, but I came out of Lancaster Uni, with a real yearning to make my own theatre, and to explore all the possibilities that theatre could kind of conjure up, and that's what I've done ever since. Um, so I've steadfastly stuck to my guns and made shows of my own and worked with companies on a collaborative basis. That's the way I think of it. So I'm not really a jobbing actor. I'm not. But lots of actors on in the industry will go to auditions and they put themselves out there and they apply for jobs. And I'm not really that kind of actor. I haven't been anyway. I tend to work with what I would, this sounds a bit pretentious, but a portfolio of companies. So I've got this kind of relationships, and it all, let's face it, it all boils down to relationships, but these relationships with different companies over the years that I've kind of nurtured, and a part of my history, and they're really precious to me. You know, I don't do a job just to get a step up in the ladder. You know, that's not how I think about it, really. I do a job because I really want to get stuck in, and I believe in that work.
And I assume believing in that work and being passionate about that work perhaps brings us on to this current project that you're working on, which is is it the Fred Jeffs podcast? The Sweetshop Murder? What's the actual title, actually?
Well, the full title is Fred Jeffs, the Sweetshop Murder. And it started out as a theatre project. And it became increasingly obvious that because of the way that I'd produced it and collated the material, that there was so much gorgeous, rich audio material that the theatre event couldn't do justice to. You need more time to be able to sit and properly digest it through headphones or whatever. So it became clear very early on that this would make a really good kind of radio play or podcast. And that was an ambition. There's a lot of work goes into it, as I've discovered, but that's what we've got now.
Mm-hmm. So what you haven't said is the direct connection that you've got with this particular project itself, because it actually relates to, am I right, a family member?
Yeah. If people ask me how long this has taken to put together, the truth is about 35 years, because I became aware, I became aware a little bit longer ago than that my great uncle, one of my great uncles, had been murdered in Quinton. And he was a sweet shop owner in Stanley Road, Quinton, which is Worley. It's on the Sandwell side of the Hagley Road. And what really amazed me was that the family members, like my dad, it was my dad's uncle, and my nan, didn't really want to talk about him. It was as if there was some kind of shame attached to the whole episode and the story that meant that they wanted to kind of marginalize this figure. And I mean, I didn't even know that my granddad had a brother. He was a half brother, as it happened, but he wasn't really talked about as being part of the family. And that always struck me as odd. And the more I investigated, the more I realized that he'd been a murder victim. Okay, unsolved murder. This is stranger and stranger. There didn't seem to be any lead which led to a kind of explanation of why he was killed, but people didn't want to talk about it, and the police investigation had clearly dried up. So I was kind of sitting on this, and I suppose my natural curiosity eventually made me think, I'd like to know more about that. And it was when I was at uni, and I was doing a playwriting course in my second year at uni. And, you know, you're given a task of writing a short treatment for a play. I thought, blimey, what am I going to do? So I ended up doing a treatment for the Fred Jeffs story. And then when we read it out, people were just like aghast. People were really amazed at the story. And for me, it didn't really, it was just like a little family skeleton that was a bit odd. I didn't realize it had greater significance. So that was a real light bulb moment for me, of realizing that this story had a further life beyond itself, And I'd always been sitting on it thinking, oh, one day I must do something with that, And it was 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? No, it was.
I was actually going to say, wasn't it earlier than that? I didn't realize I was in a project called The Corner Shop.
Yes.
And part of that story was it was just about the shop really more than anything. Am I right in saying that? Which was with Black Country Touring?
Absolutely, because I'd made a show with Steve of Black Country Touring about the Bosnian War back in 2004. And we've been talking about doing a follow-up project to that. And I talked about the Fred Jeffs project then. And Steve and I had talked about it being like a site-specific event where we could bus the audience around the actual sites around Sandwell, the sweet shop, Warley Woods, where we think he was attacked, the Wasson, or Wasson rather, on Sandwell Valley, where his body was recovered. And we got quite excited about that. But I think the timing wasn't right anyway. But then when Corner Shop came up, my dad, I got my dad interviewed with Steve about it, his memories, and they fed into John Flitcroft's role in the Corner Shop. So that was when? That was 2008? 2000?
Yeah, 2007, something. Yeah, 2007, maybe 2007, 2008. And then, so all this time, does it suddenly make you think? Did you get a chance to go and see the Corner Shop where you saw the? Yeah,
I loved it. It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. I loved it. But the best ideas just don't go away. I think when you have an idea and you mull it over and you process it and it gestates, and some ideas just fizzle away and then they get forgotten, and some just keep coming back to kind of haunt you, and this one did. And it was just a question of time and place, really. But I was super aware that anybody with a living memory of those events from 1957 would now be, pushing it in terms of their age. They'll be in the 70s, 80s, or older. And so I'm really painfully aware that time has been running out to capture memories, first-hand memories of the Fred Jeffs story and that murder. And that was something that I was passionately wanting to kind of capture in some way. So when the rep, they put out a call for a community engagement project called through their Furnace program, and this was at the end of 2017, and I applied. It takes me ages to put any application together, but I put it together, and they obviously saw something in it, and took it on. And with that, it gave me the license to be able to legitimately go to the people in Quinton and Warley, to go and look for people and to start having conversations with them. And I did that through the libraries of Bleak House Library in Warley and Thimble Mill in Smethwick. And that was a starting point. And that's where I saw you, actually, because you very generously came along and gave me some of your own memories of knowledge of Handsworth, which is where the body was found. And slowly I just gathered all of this material, and I've got about 80 interviews with different people. And what I found out was that the more I just scratched this, I scratch at the surface and stuff just comes out. The most brilliant stuff that I would never have expected, and stories from people. And I can't, everything has been a bonus for me. I never expected to get anything. I just thought it might be a little family story. So everything has been a bonus, and what bonuses I've got.
Did you find that, like, as you've delved deeper and deeper into it, did you get a chance to look at the police investigation and start making your own judgments as to whether they were good or just incompetent, or it was circumstantial, or there were other issues, or somebody had paid somebody else off to make sure that evidence went missing, or is your mind suddenly creating these explanations?
Well, the primary source initially was this police journal that my nan had. And I don't really know how she got hold of it, but somebody must have given it to her. And it was from 1971. And it was written by a chief superintendent who'd been a bobby probably on the case at the time. And he gave a kind of resume of the events of Maundy Thursday 1957. What, from his perspective, from the police perspective, what they think happened to Fred Jeffs, in that he was yeah, there was a mystery woman who appeared in the shop, and then he went to meet her at Worley Woods. Nobody knows what happened afterwards, but his dog was recovered in a whimpering in a garage in Langley, and his van was found abandoned in Witton, near not far from the Villa Ground. And I'm not casting any aspersions on potential Villa fans, but but the body itself was found up Camp Lane, Park Lane, not far from the Albion ground. Not casting any aspersions on the
I think you really need. I think you really need to look into that one, mate.
But anyway, sorry, going back to the point, the police, it was from a police journal, but it kind of ends, it kind of ties itself up saying, well, you know, and it's no, you know, we think the motive was robbery, but we don't really know, and it dried up. And then with the help of my cousin, actually, who became very keen, cousin James, he got in touch with the Rose Road police station in Harborne, which deals with historic cases. And we put in an application to try and get some information. And twice this was done, and were met with the response that nothing exists in the archive. Everything has disappeared, destroyed. And for me, that raises more questions than it answers. You can't just say, oh, right, that's fine then. This was an unsolved murder. There were very, very few West Midlands unsolved murders from the end of the war through until the beginning of the 70s. You could count them on, you know, two hands. And some of those were newborn babies as well. So, it was, yeah, very few. After 74, with the pub bombings, it changes completely. And the stats are skewed because technically the victims of the pub bombings are, yeah, they're victims of an unsolved murder. But for me to realize that they just got rid of everything, all the forensic material had gone, all documentation disappeared, I thought, something odd there, something peculiar. I can't understand why, you know, in press records tell you what was found in the van. They give you a list of all the items, and some of those items would have had forensic material on them. But of course, it was in the days before DNA testing. They could take fingerprints from the van, but it just dries up, which begs the question as to whether, you know, somebody perhaps higher up at some point just said, I think we need to just forget about this. He got nobody fighting his corner, and he was easily dispensable. But in the absence of fact, as I say, there is mountains of speculation as to what really happened and who might have been responsible. Because this clearly he wasn't just the victim of a bungled robbery. This was a very clearly kind of signposted and planned attack on him. And he was brutally murdered, which suggests that there was an element of vengeance or malice about the attack. And then the more I tried to unravel about his life and about people who knew him, the more seemed to kind of emerge. And it's a project that just keeps on giving, really. So even though I've managed to wrap up the story in 7 episodes, not without wanting to give any spoilers away, there is more to be found, without doubt.
Gosh, for you, have you managed to keep yourself emotionally detached, knowing that this is a family member, or at times have you gone kind of where somebody's had to step in and going, Graeme, look, you're just getting too emotional. Look, you need to step away from that. Or is there also at the same time and this is another question, is there a bit of a creative license as well? Or have you kind of tried to keep to the facts? Is it kind of more factual with the speculation around it? Or is it a case of, oh, wait, there, in terms of a license, maybe artistic license, this would sound better, more interesting?
For me, the whole artistic process stems from this question: why now? Why here? Why me? What is it? What gives me license to be able to tell any story? whatever we're doing. Um, and so for me, the personal connection, finding a personal grasp on a story, feels always really important as an actor or as a maker. You want to get under the skin of something, and I'm in a really good position to be able to, and I am the only person to be able to tell this story really legitimately. But having said that, I have no memory of Fred Jeffs. He died way before I was born. He was the end of a line for his side of the family in a way. And my dad always was very kind of dispassionate about Fred and slightly dismissive of him. And that made me curious. What was it about Fred that meant that he wasn't easy to connect to? Was it a kind of personality flaw? Was it selfishness, which I'd heard family members talking about? What was it? But for me, his story is also a universal story. It's about, how do you tell anybody's story? How can you summarize somebody's life in a police journal? How can a crime and a terrible death come to define your life? So for me, there was also an element of trying to unravel him as a person, to find out more about him as a person, because I know that he's more than just a victim. He's a living, breathing, loving human being who somehow got caught in this chain of events.
Would you say that he was he a lovable rogue, or was he quite innocent? Oh, I mean, maybe you started to give bits away then if you start answering it.
The truth of it is,
because I'm only going by the fact of, so you're hearing all this stuff by your dad, by your grandfather, sorry, saying, I don't want to talk about it, and so suddenly it's conjuring up ideas, and the rest of it, and then suddenly when you start delving into it, you're kind of going, actually, he wasn't like that. He was actually probably more like this.
Well, I didn't want to automatically assume, like you would never want to assume anything of a person. There's always redeeming features in anybody. Why do people behave in the way they behave? It's what, the myriad of questions that you always ask as an actor of your character. What drives them? What are the motivating forces? My dad, I never knew my granddad, Fred's brother. He died before I was born. Okay. But incidentally, both my granddad and Fred had been in the same prisoner of war camp in the war, which I always found really bizarre. That doesn't really get tackled much in the story. That's a whole other series of the Netflix
episodes series. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14.
It's hugely far-reaching in a way, but for his generation, they came back from the war, they didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to, everything was just hushed up. And for the younger generation, and I think my dad kind of inherited a bit of that, it's like, oh, we don't want to talk about that, just keep it stum. And you talked earlier about an emotional connection. If there is an emotional connection, it's not really about Fred so much, it's about that world that grew up in the aftermath of the Fred, that survived the impact of the incident. And since I started making this in the last 2 years, my auntie Mary, who fed me lots of stories, and my dad have died. So I managed to, my dad's a character who I managed to interview for the podcast, and he's gone. He left us 6 months ago. So for me, it was partly about capturing, it's like a little love poem to a time and a place, and to hear those voices captured, frozen, and in some instances it's a 70-year-old speaking the words of a 9-year-old, because they're remembering exactly where they were and exactly what they were doing in 1957. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I find this form really entrancing because of that, and you can hear all those nuances in the voices. Uh, I mentioned this actually. This for some listeners and yourself, you probably remember Creature Comforts, don't you?
Mm.
The Aardman Creature
Yep.
Comforts, and those voices. You hear those voices, and they're animated. Well, the reason I mention that is because I was asked by Aardman to interview for Creature Comforts, and so the Brummy characters that you get in the series in like 2001, 2002 were interviewed by me, um, and mate, I didn't realize this until recently, I suppose, but there is a kind of connection there, because it's about listening to their voices and the richness of the language, the kind of words they use, that which reveal so much about their lives and their own histories. And I find that emotional. Do you know what I mean? It's Fred is, in a way, it's not. It's like he's a cipher. He's an excuse to get people talking about the richness of their childhoods and their memories.
So for you, Graeme, what's your particular role itself? Are you through the podcasts? Are you kind of showing that you're exploring each of the areas? Are you kind of being a detective, or what's your kind of particular role, or what's your style in terms of telling this particular story itself, or are you being a character in there, or a ghost character, or what?
I think it changes a little bit, but I think basically I'm the narrator who slips in between moments of clear detective work and moments of being me, reminding the audience of perhaps my personal family connection to it. So it does slip a little bit. The episodes are between kind of 16 and 24 minutes long each, and Sam Fox and Ricardo Rocha, Fox and Rocha, have created this beautiful soundtrack which underscores it, and that really helps to add color to the telling of the story, and it helps you to understand in any given moment what's the more the film noir. I'm being a film noir detective, like a Philip Marlowe detective in one moment, and you've got the walking bass line underneath that's driving towards a series of questions and interrogations, and then you've got other moments which are more reflective and light, where you've got the sound of the shop. I mean, they've created a beautiful palette of sounds which take us to different locations, I think, which add colour. So you don't have to listen to me in a monotone all the
time. Mate, your voice is amazing. I'm just so excited to actually start listening to the podcast itself. For those who do want to listen to the podcasts, how can they get? Where do they have to go, or what do they have to do? When they're available? And the rest of it.
Well, the podcasts have been made available through Black Country Touring with Creative Black Country. So you can go to the Black Country Touring website and put in Fred Jeffs, or any Google. It's now up and running, so you can hashtag Fred Jeffs will take you to the podcasts. The podcasts are available on Anchor. That's a distribution channel, so they're now on Spotify. They will soon be on iTunes and lots of other platforms as well, SoundCloud as well. But if you look out on social media for Fred Jeffs the Sweetshop Murder, and you'll find stuff.
And is there a fee that people need to pay for this, or?
Oh no, there isn't. It's absolutely free.
It's free.
Every episode is free. All I'd ask is that you enjoy it, like it, comment if you feel you can, and share it. And if you know who done it, please let us know. And if you know somebody else who thinks they might know who done it, then just spread the word.
Did you ever get kind of people where you kind of too much false information, where you're kind of going, no, that's definitely wrong. You know, they're trying to create their own play and going, yeah, it was such and such, and you're going, that had nothing to do with it. Did you get a lot of that false information, or was?
For me, that's the beauty of it, because I liken this to a jigsaw puzzle. It's like a massive jigsaw puzzle, and that's some of the bits are really fitting together because, you know, somebody says something and somebody else, his version of events agrees, but then you'll get somebody who's got a completely different take on it, and you think, whoa, that was really left field. How did you know that? The thing is that some people are, you know, for them they're totally convinced, and I'm thinking, how do they know that? They've remembered it for 63 years. They know it from somewhere, but you just can't tell what the channel of the root of that information is. So actually, as Steve Johnston, the director, kind of helpfully pointed out, it's not one jigsaw puzzle. It's several jigsaw puzzles that have all been chucked in the same box. Sure. And there you are, scratching your head, trying to.
There's some jigsaw puzzles that shouldn't even be in the box.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or pretending to be a jigsaw, mate. You're not even a jigsaw. It's a Lego piece. Get out. You know. Look, Graeme, it's so wonderful chatting to you. Actually, one thing I was going to ask you was, where do you stop? Where you go, okay, now is the time to put this story to bed, and that's it. Or is it a case of, no, it's continuous. I've got to, you know. I mean, we talked about your grandfather and obviously being prisoners of war. So again, that's obviously other stories, but
yeah.
Maybe about Fred Jeffs, do you get to a stage where you go no more, or do you kind of go, yeah, keep bringing it, I'll keep listening? And
I think the only thing that will stop me is other projects. If I'm lucky enough to get other projects come in the way, they'll just divert me, because when I get involved with something, I love to really immerse myself and wholeheartedly stick to that. So stuff will get put on the shelf for a while. Excuse me, but the project has lasted, 30 odd years so far, and I don't think it's going to go away until, who knows, we solve it.
What's another 30 years, eh?
Well, I've already instructed my son Jacob to take on the mantle. I've said, if for any strange reason I get bumped off along the way, then he's got to pick up the mantle and continue the work.
No, look, Graeme, it's great, as I've said, and I know once people hear this, they will absolutely love it. And what we do want to see is, we want to see this turned into a film, onto Netflix, all right, BBC or ITV or whatever, as long as you got me a role in it. No. But it just the fact, I think the story is just so, it's brilliant. For me, what's lovely about it is that I didn't even know. I was chatting to Steve, and he said, when he told me, he said, oh, you remember Corner Shop? And I went, obviously, because I was in it. And he was like, oh, you know that story about the sweet shop? You know whose shop that was? And I was like, no, it's Graeme's. And I was like, no. And suddenly you're going, wow, that's connected to that, and then that's connected to that, and you're just like, oh, that's just brilliant. So yeah, no, and I really do
love the connection with this, and that's just making connections with people. So many people have come forward and said, oh, actually, my nan remembers that, and she, such and such, and she was here and there, and it's brilliant. I love it. And storytelling in this collective way there's something really powerful in it and rich, because one person's memory is valuable, but when you put it into an open forum, then it just becomes rich. It just comes alive with different people's memories. It's fabulous. So I feel very lucky to have been able to make it happen.
And there's that same thing at the same time where you've kind of said, whereby that generation, they're getting older, and there's still so many of their stories, I think, which we all still need to collect, because once they're gone, and the younger generation have their own stories now, different stories as well, but which connect to different things. So,
It's so lovely when I got an email from a young woman I think she's in her early 20s, who said, I've just been talking to my nan and granddad, and they told me this extraordinary story, and when I googled it, your name came up, and I said, great, fantastic, give me their landline, because lots of the folks who have memories don't have email addresses, or mobile phones. They can't get hold of this, and it would be brilliant if we could, the podcast could reach those people. But I think one of the great channels for doing that is through their grandchildren. And so this young Alicia then directed me to one of the boys who found Fred Jeffs' body.
Oh my gosh.
On Wasson on the afternoon of the 19th of April 1957, and I went to his house, and it was such a joy because I felt like a connection, a wonderful kind of connection to him. It's like we were pals, because he's been yearning to tell this story, and he didn't know how to tell this story. And now, what I will do is I'll send you the file for this, because it's a little short piece, and it is a beautiful, amazing story that will never leave him.
Right.
And will never leave me.
No. And can people still send you information if they suddenly have more information, or suddenly somebody goes, oh, wait there, I remember this, or I remember that, or my nan told me this, or my grandfather told me this, so they can contact you?
I'd absolutely love for people to talk to their, the elders in their family, if they've lived in Worley, Quinton, Smethwick, up at Wasson in Sandwell Valley, if they remember this event from 1957. I'd love to spread the word, because there's so much out there, and there's so much more to learn about this.
Well, Mr. Graeme Rose, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Just remind us again what the name of the podcast is.
The podcast is Fred Jeffs, The Sweetshop Murder, by me, Graeme Rose.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.